Now he's talking these days a lot about the idea that the Beinoni can achieve the level of a tzaddik in davening and in Kriya Shema if he does proper preparation. But as we said many times so far, after davening, the lights dim, it goes away, and the struggle renews. What is this meditation that he's supposed to have? He must have it. He has described in the past a natural love in the heart of every person. Every Jewish person has a natural love and fear of God. It's an inheritance. We get it from our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-great-grandparents, and it's planted in the DNA of the Jewish creature. To have a love of Hashem, which we get from Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah, who served Hashem every day, all day. And it became planted in their consciousness, and it was passed down to their children and their children's children after them. If you don't see it, it's only because it's covered over. And either a clever educator or circumstances or children can cause it to become uncovered, and then it flares up. You know, there was a certain person, just as an example of this, who was a child of a Holocaust survivor. The father was so traumatized by his experiences in the war, he wanted nothing more to do with God or with Judaism. He didn't give his children, his only son, didn't give him a bris. As a young man, he grew up in Israel. As a young man, he came to visit the United States. His companion said, "Let's go visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe." He didn't want to go. He said, I'm not involved in religious things and religion. But they went. And the Rebbe gave $1 to a friend, and he gave $1 to him. And then supposedly, I'm not sure about this detail, took it back, or he said, this is for when you'll have a bris or something like that. So, in other words, like you'll get $1 when you have a bris. He had never had a bris. He was very upset to hear this. Maybe felt hurt. Again, the detail, that particular incident, the details are a bit unclear in my mind. But the point is, the bris was lacking, and the $1 was promised to be in connection with the bris. The son became a Baal Tshuva. He had a son and didn't give his son a bris, and the son became a Baal Tshuva. And the son had the bris, and the son got married and had a baby. He was urging his father to have a bris, and the father was reluctant. And then finally, because of his great love of his son, a few days before the bris, he actually arranged that he secretly had a bris. Oh, wow. Yeah, the father came to the bris and secretly had a bris. And now the son who had a bris was giving a bris to his son, and his father was there. And when the story came out that his father had a bris, the caterer was so moved. He said, he didn't tell him about the Rebbe's $1. The caterer was so moved by this that the father had a bris in order to honor his son who was giving a bris to his son. The caterer said, I have $1 from the Rebbe. I want to give it to you.
Oh. Wow.
Now, really have to check up the details on the story, how it all played itself out. But the bottom line is that the caterer gave him $1. The Rebbe had promised him $1 years before when he will have a bris. So the point of the story, though, is that the love of Hashem is there, even in someone who's been so hardened by circumstances and feels that he wants nothing to do with Hashem. And the point I make is it can be covered over, and that means it can be uncovered.
Do you have a favorite Rebbe story?
What?
Do you have a favorite Rebbe story? Like, there's so many really cool and wholesome ones. But if you have one that's just like, whoa, I don't know.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But every Rebbe story is a favorite, and I always tell them to you.
But can we hear the
So-
one that for you is just like the whoa?
Well, I just told it to you a few days ago. It's a
I always tell lots of
story of the Rebbe Maharash. His birthday was 2 days ago.
Mhm.
And that's the story of Rebbe Elia Abler, which I just told you about how he came to the Rebbe and said, I don't need anything, Rebbe, but there's a guy in our village who has no hatzlacha. Everything we do for him, when it goes wrong, he has no hatzlacha. We raised money for him and everything. Again, the wagon broke, the horse died, the thieves stole the merchandise. Rebbe, and he cried, burst out crying. He said, Rebbe, please give him a bracha. And the Rebbe reached in his pocket and gave him a gold coin or a silver coin. He gave him a coin, a sizable coin. He said, Rebbe Elia, I want to be your partner. He said to me, you want to be my partner? Akeli, a vessel whose the only way to fix it is by breaking it. You want to be my partner? And the Friedrich Rebbe writes that he doesn't know what the Rebbe answered to that. But the point of the story is that that's what the Rebbe, that's what Chabad wants from us. That kind of compassion in actual fact, in doing. If we don't memorize the 53 chapters of the Tanya, the Eibishter doesn't mind. But he does want that we should have the care and concern and feeling for another person and help them to come closer to Yiddishkeit. What?
I'm somebody explained it to me, but I just forgot. Like when the Rebbe gives dollars and things like that, why do people hold on to them and not like use them for tzedakah? Like why don't they put it towards?
They would exchange the
But like, why is that dollar so special?
Well, how was it explained to you? You said someone explained to you, but you forget. You
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah.
Well, it's holy. Because anything that the Rebbe is involved with has holiness. Because when we do a mitzvah, whenever we do a mitzvah, you say a bracha, or even if you do a mitzvah without saying a bracha. Not every mitzvah requires a bracha. There's sparks of holiness in the whole world. We learned this. The life and everything that's permissible to us comes from one of the 4 levels of Klippa. Just like there are 4 letters of the name of God. The first letter of the name of God is Yud, and then there are 3 other letters that bring that life force represented by the letters down into the physical world. There are 4 worlds. We learned that also. The highest of these 4 worlds is united with God, like the Yud. And in the Zel is one thing is created opposite the other. So we have in the world of Klippa, which is the idea of Klippa is it hides godliness. And in the world of Klippa, there are also 4 levels, negative levels corresponding to the positive levels of life in the world. All the permissible things in the world get their life from one of these 4 klippas, which is the top one. That's called klippas noga. Noga means to shine because it can shine. The life force in all these things that get their life from klippas noga can be elevated and reunited with its original source in godliness. Other things are non-kosher. We're not allowed to deal with them because they contain, the life force within them is a powerful hiding of God, so powerful that we cannot overcome it, but it could overcome us. So therefore the Torah says, don't go there. You're going to lose. You're not going to win with this one. You can't go out and have bacon and eggs in the morning and then learn Torah, because the Torah that you learn will not have holiness in it. And not only that, it will encourage you to do something else wrong. When you eat non-kosher food, it makes you confused. It makes your heart insensitive because your food becomes your heart, your flesh and blood. And so therefore, when you're faced with a choice between right and wrong, good and evil, you'll make the selfish choice because you tuned out to holiness by eating non-kosher food. And that's what it says in the Ethics of the Fathers. One mitzvah brings another in its train. When you do one good deed, it's going to lead you to be more receptive to doing the next good deed the next time you have a chance. And on a mystical level, it also causes that Hashem arranges that you should have a chance. But if you do a bad deed, heaven forbid, then when the choice has to be made, you don't have any help to make the right choice. You're all alone, and your selfish inclinations are very strong. So a lot of the time, you're going to make the wrong choice. Because just like one good deed brings another in its train, one bad deed brings another bad deed in its train. And bringing a good deed in its train means that in heaven, they help you. They arrange that you should have a chance to do another good deed. And the opposite is also true. That if a person does a bad deed and he thinks, well, I won't do it again, just this one time, doesn't work. Because now he's relying on the fact that he'll be better later, and that's part of the bad deed. His motivation for doing a sin is, I'll fix it later. Like a person on a diet who says, I'm just going to have this one thing from the Viennese table. Well, it's never and from now on, I'm going to stick to my diet. It's the same psychology. Since you have the one cake on the table, so you're going to have more. Maybe not at this table, but at the next table.
So when someone's becoming Baal Teshuva, at what point does a mitzvah they're doing actually start counting?
Just a minute. I have to stay on. Malka, please forgive me.
Okay.
I have to stick with this question. So what happens when you do a mitzvah, you do a good deed? The life force that's hidden in the object that you're dealing with comes from the klippa called klippas noga. And it's called noga because it's possible for you to have an influence on it for good. That you can redeem the life force in this object, say a blessing on it before, a blessing on it afterwards, and you reunite it with its life force and holiness. And therefore, it's called in the Torah permissible. Permissible literally means free. That is to say, not tied down. The word for forbidden is tied down, imprisoned. The life force in this object is imprisoned in it. It's held there by powerful klippas. How can you elevate bacon and eggs? By not having them. By resisting the temptation, you elevate them. Well, resisting is much harder than doing. And the life force in the forbidden things is higher than the life force in permissible things. People like seafood. By not having shrimp and oysters, they elevate the shrimp and oysters. If a person thinks, you wash your hands in the morning, you do negel wasser, and they tell you that there's impurity in the water, you believe that? Sure you believe it, because you were told to believe it. But let's say a person didn't believe it, and he drank his negel wasser to prove that it's just superstition. Now comes a chance for this person to do a mitzvah. Like one time when I was working on campus, so there were like 30,000 students on this campus. 5,000 registered as Jewish. It was a big campus. And the editor of the newspaper had a huge budget. Even though he was still young, he had a budget equivalent today of millions. And so many students, a big market, everybody advertised in this newspaper. Jewish guy from Long Island. And I took him one time matzah before Pesach, and he said, I'm going to have it tonight. I love matzah. I said, save it for Pesach. He says, I'm going to have it tonight, and if I'm doing a sin, let the Almighty strike me dead now, like this.
Did he die?
See? I'm still here. So that's the kind of response that comes from not doing mitzvahs. On the other hand, what about the story I told you? You asked about favorite stories, Malka. The story of Woolstone, the Australian, who lives in our community here. He told me the story himself. How the Baba of a Rebbe, he was brought to the Baba of a Rebbe by Rabbi Twersky, the famous psychologist. They were working together in crisis intervention. And Rabbi Twersky called in the head of the community, the Baba community in Borough Park, and he said, we have a problem. Where there's a young lady from our community who ran away. We think she went to Australia. Could you help us find her? He said, Rebbe, do you know how big Australia is? I have no clue who the girl is, where she is. So the Rebbe said an extraordinary thing. Listen to this, Samantha. He said, you are a Lubavitcher. Why don't you ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe for some advice? How you could help us. Isn't that amazing? Tzaddikim working together. I can't tell you where she is, but ask the Rebbe. You see, when all else fails, the Rebbe is the last address. So what happens? The Rebbe asked him certain questions, had nothing to do with finding this girl, about his travel plans, and said, so you're going to lose a day, you're crossing the date line, you'll be in Melbourne, the next day you go to Sydney, that's where you live. That's all the Rebbe said. And that's what happened. He got to Melbourne on Thursday, Melbourne time, spent Friday in Melbourne, or vice versa, maybe he arrived on Friday morning and spent Shabbos in Melbourne. Sunday, he's going to Sydney, sitting on the plane. A lady ends up, his seat is beside a lady, very nice looking lady, in her 50s. And she tells him that she's religious. Her grandfather established the Greek Orthodox Church in Australia, and she is in business. She has 10 stores. Ladies wear, so on. Half an hour before landing, she turns to him and says, tell me something. In your religion, remember the story, Malka? Do you remember the story? I'm ringing a bell. Okay, let me.
No, I probably heard it because I've heard so many of these stories and I hear the beginning. I'm like, okay, I know the punchline, but I'm like forgetting it.
Okay, well, I don't think you'll forget this one.
All right.
She turns and says, in your religion, if a person leaves the fold, do you accept them back? And he says, yes. Why do you say that? She said, well, because I have this chain of 10 stores, and I think a lady from your community in Brooklyn is working in one of them.
Wow.
And he starts to tremble. She says, are you all right? He says, yes, I'm all right. I'm astonished. And he tells her the whole story. Then she starts trembling. And she says, I'll do anything to help you. I'll give you money, I'll give you a car, I'll give you directions. This is just too extraordinary. He said, I don't need your money, your car, I just need the directions. And he goes to, beyond Sydney is a city called Brisbane. There was no shliach there at the time, there is now. And beyond Brisbane is Brisbane. These are places like Myrtle Beach, you know.
Oh, I know Myrtle Beach.
They're beaches on the northern coast of Australia, the resorts. And she has a lady shop. You go there and buy your bathing suits and things like that. And he goes into the store in a city called Cairns, so a little small seaside resort. And he comes to the store, he walks in, and there's a girl sitting in the back, and she sees him. He's a chassid with a beard. She just gets up and shouts and says, "Did my father send you?" He said, "No, the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent me." And when he told me the story, we were waiting for the bus to Montreal, and the bus came in and he got on the bus. I said, "But what happened?" He said, "She's a upstanding member of the Jewish community in Melbourne today." And then later I met him several months later at a Kiddush, and I said, how did we get from the bus stop to the end? And he filled in the details. Okay, so that's a very extraordinary story. That's a supernatural story, how tzaddikim arrange things, but it illustrates this idea that I'm bringing about, that when you do one mitzvah in heaven, they arrange that you should be able to do another mitzvah. When I tell this story, I always say to myself, how does the tzaddik do that? How do you arrange that somebody should be sitting beside the person they need to meet on the airplane a week in advance? Or put the question on a bigger scale. How does Hashem do it that before he met this woman on the plane, it was preordained in the primordial thought of God before he created the world that they would mate? And the whole creation of the world in every detail from that point till then was leading up to that encounter. And this is behind understanding what they call Ruach HaKodesh, that a tzaddik understands things that people don't understand. He sees things that people don't see. So now we get back to the object that you say a blessing on that object. Give you another example, another story. When Napoleon declared war on Russia, all the rabbis got together and they decided, well, whose side are we on? Who are we going to pray for? The Alter Rebbe said, pray for Russia. We have to back Russia. But we suffer under them. He said, you'll suffer more under the French. Why? Because the French were against religion. Napoleon declared war on the Church of Rome. And wherever he went, he emancipated any religious persecution. He freed people from religious persecution. So he abolished the ghettos. The Jews became citizens of the world. And what did that lead to? 100 years later, it led to the Holocaust, when the Germans said, you're not Germans, you're Jews. And the Alter Rebbe said, the assimilation that will come about as a result of Napoleon will be extremely harmful to the world. Extremely harmful to the world. And therefore he fought and did everything he could to help Russia in its cause. I told you the story about Moshe Meisels, the spy. Okay, now when Napoleon was invading Russia, the Russians didn't have the army to fight Napoleon. What did they do? They had the winter. They retreated. They burned the fields. The field that was in the food was in the fields, and they let winter do its job that they couldn't survive. And when he came to the village where the Alter Rebbe had lived, the first place he wanted to go was to the house of the rabbi. When he got there, the house was in flames. When they were fleeing, the Rebbe stopped and sent back a chassid because there were a pair of slippers that had been worn out and were thrown underneath the house. They didn't have a basement. They just threw old things under the house, sent them back to get the slippers and destroy them. And the first thing that Napoleon did when he came to the village was, where is the house of the old rabbi, the Alter Rebbe? He wanted any object he could get his hands on, because if he could get his hands on, he was from the other side. He was using black magic. And he wanted to be able to have a grasp on the holiness of the Rebbe, because he felt this was the inner soul of the like the guardian angel of Russia, of the Russian cause. And he was very, very angry and upset and frustrated that there was nothing there that he could hold and grasp. So something from a tzaddik becomes invested with the holiness of the tzaddik, because his interaction with any object elevates it. One time, my daughter, as a little girl, was with me in 770, and we were like halfway back, and the Rebbe was coming out, and she was very excited to see the Rebbe coming, and she jumped up and down and knocked a tilim off the back of the bench. The Rebbe stopped and picked it up and put it back on the bench. I felt very embarrassed that my daughter had caused the Rebbe to bend down, and some other smart person grabbed the tilim and made off with it. He grabbed the tilim and made off with it. This was a tilim that the Rebbe had held in his hands. In other words, it had been invested with the holiness of the Rebbe. And that's what Napoleon wanted, something that had been invested with the holiness of the Alter Rebbe. And people hold on to it. Well, not everybody holds on to it. You know, Mrs. Gansberg was the dorm mother, and her husband, he gave away all his dollars to the soldiers in Israel. But there's holiness in the dollar. And I mean, there's a dollar, that certain dollars, the Rebbe gave a bracha to a person to have a refuah shalema, and then that dollar was passed around, and a lot of miracles happened to people in terms of health and wellness. Because everything a tzaddik does, there's no such thing as a chance encounter with a tzaddik. Everything that tzaddik does is part of his service of God. And if there's an object that he does something with that object, that becomes part of his service of God, and the object becomes imbued with holiness. And if we do any of the mitzvah campaigns of the Rebbe, we're involved in them, then that's a power that we get, that we have this connection with the Rebbe. Well, with that, we didn't really learn anything in chapter 13 today, but I think we learned some very basic ideas about tzaddikim and about ourselves. And it's the biggest chus that we have, to be able to fulfill the teachings of the Rebbe. Someone asked the Friediger Rebbe one time, how can I be connected to you? We never met. The Rebbe said, if you want to be connected to me, it's written in Hayom Yom, if you want to be connected to me, the way to connect to me is by learning the things that I teach, the sichas, learning the maimorim that I say, and by associating with other Hasidim. Meaning, I think that means that since they are involved in the ideas that are important to me, that you will also become involved in the ideas that are important to me. And of course, it goes without saying that the Rebbe initiated 10 actual formal mitzvah campaigns, plus, in addition to those 10 others, like learning Rambam every day, and having a letter in the Sefer Torah, and so on. And by doing these things, we have a connection with the Rebbe. Just like when you do a mitzvah, it connects you to Hashem. A commandment is a connector. It connects you to the one who gives the commandments. So if we do the campaigns of the Rebbe, that connects us to him. And we become then vehicles for things that the Rebbe wants to happen. And if we have a merit, they happen through us.
Very much.
Thank you.